everyone, welcome to my Bake Along series. I have another fun new recipe for you. This is for tarte au sucre. Literally translated to mean sugar pie. It is sweetened 100% with maple syrup. So I'm going to walk you through how to roll and trim a pie dough pastry base and then make this sumptuous silky maple custard. First, by boiling the maple syrup, then baking the pie. This pie is delicious. I know you're gonna love it. Stay with me for tarte au sucre. Tarte au sucre is sugar pie, and it uses 100% maple syrup to sweeten it. If you've never tried this sugar pie before, it is a bit like a butter tart in its filling texture, or imagine a pecan pie, but without the pecans and lots of maple syrup. Now, to make this pie, it starts with a classic pie pastry. And for my full recipe for my signature pie dough, you can click on the full link below to get to the video, including the recipe with all the tips for a flaky, tender pie dough. I've already got one disc that's chilled and ready to roll. So that's the first thing you want to do before you make the filling. We're going to pour the warm filling into the pie dough and bake it once. So you don't have to bake this pie pastry twice. And you bake it in a regular pie shell. And when I start rolling my pie dough, I keep moving it a lot, of course, to make sure it doesn't stick. And I'm rotating it as I do that. And now what I like to do when I'm rolling my pie pastry, it looks nice and smooth from this side, but if you're going to develop a crack in the middle of the pie dough, it happens from the bottom because you're putting all the pressure from the top, and that's how the dough splits. So I usually like to flip it. Oh, and there are the beginnings. It's just the nature of the pastry, how it behaves. But when I flip it and then roll from the top, it seals those little cracks back together. If you think you're going to be making a lot of pie pastry, using a French tapered rolling pin is really ideal. I like the taper because I can lean my pressure one side or the other, and it really helps coax a round shape. And you can feel where the dough is thicker right here. I can just move around and sort of spin the pin around to make sure I have level, even dough as I roll. And with your hands on top of the pin, as opposed to the sides, you can really feel the dough as you're working it. I want to roll this to just under 1/4 inch thick. All right, that is the right diameter and thickness. I'm using a glass pie plate because it conducts the heat well in that it holds the heat, which, because I'm putting a liquid filling into this pie pastry, I want the heat to really crisp up the pastry underneath it, so that the filling doesn't seep into the pastry. When you're lining a pie shell, you want to lift and let the dough relax into the edges of the pie shell. That will help prevent it from shrinking down or changing its shape too much. And then if you see any excess dough, you do want to leave some overhanging, but you can trim some away if it's too thick. That's pretty good. And then tuck that overhanging dough underneath. There, so it's rough looking right now. Once you've got it all tucked in, then go around the full circumference of the pie shell. Just pinch it into place. And at this point, you're locking the pastry onto the pie shell itself. So when the filling goes in, the pie shell won't sink in over the filling. And then the decorative detail could be as simple as taking a fork and pressing an edge, or with your finger and thumb. This is that final lock, securing the shell on top of the pastry so it won't shift or move when the pie bakes. And you do this with really any pie recipe, whether it's lemon meringue, a fruit pie, that secures the pie dough in place. So now I'm going to just quickly pop this in the fridge to chill while I'm making the filling. The custard for tarte au sucre is really a custard made out of maple syrup. But before I get to the maple syrup, let's get the custard base going. I start with just a little bit of flour and a touch of salt, and I'm just going to whisk that together. And to let you know, I have some dear Québécois friends who I tested this recipe on. I didn't tell them that I was working on this at all, but over years, they would bring us tarte au sucre from Quebec for us to try because they treasured it so much. So I actually froze one of the samples they brought and then taste tested to try and replicate the recipe. And this is what I ended up with. So I have just the salt and the flour here, and I'm going to whisk in a little bit of cream. And now I like to whisk the eggs separately and add them because adding unbeaten eggs to cream, it's hard to really get the eggs nice and smooth. So the first thing I do, I just take a fork and I have 2 whole eggs and 1 yolk. Just like when you scramble eggs for breakfast, a fork works better than a whisk. Sometimes it just does. Oh, and I might as well add my vanilla to that at the same time. And the eggs get poured into the cream. And you'll notice I'm using a metal bowl. You definitely want to use a heat-proof bowl because now it's time to bring the maple syrup up to a boil. So over high heat, add your maple syrup. I'm using 375 ml of pure maple syrup. So you don't want to use maple flavored syrup for this recipe. You want to use pure maple syrup. I'm really good at offering substitutions when I can. This is a recipe. There is no substitution. Now I'm using amber maple syrup. So this is the kind of maple syrup that's perfect for pouring over your pancakes or waffles. You can use it in baking too. If I'm using a small measure of maple syrup in my baking, I'll use a dark or very dark, which has a more robust flavor. But because of this volume, that would be far too much for this recipe. And now I want to bring this maple syrup up to a full boil. And while you don't have to babysit it while it's coming up to a boil, it does start to bubble up. So pick a larger pot than just the volume itself, and do keep an eye on it for that reason. Once your syrup does start boiling, you set your timer for 2 minutes. And if you'd rather use a probe thermometer, then you check the temperature of the maple syrup. When it hits 225, you know you're good. We're just trying to concentrate the maple syrup flavor. And so the set is silky in this maple syrup tart. It's not like candying where you have to hit the precise temperature to get it properly set. We're not making caramel here. We're just concentrating the maple flavor. Now that the maple syrup's boiling, I'll set the timer and see how it came up. Whoa! But it did stop before it hit the top of the pot. You can always reduce the heat a little bit. Oh, immediately it smells delicious in here. Almost there. Just hit 225. And while the syrup is still on the heat, I'm going to add my butter to it, let the butter melt and it return to a boil, and then we're all set. The butter cooled down the maple syrup, so once it comes back to a boil, and we can see that butter has melted, I think we should be good here. Let me take a look. I have to wait for it to finish bubbling. The butter is almost melted. The final couple of swirls there. There we go. So now I'm going to just add a little maple syrup to warm up my base. And then all at once. There we go. You will find it may be a bit frothy on the surface. Oh, that smells so good. That's absolutely fine. Okay. Now at this point, your mixture might reveal a few little flour specks that float to the top. Just in case those didn't get combined, what I like to do is strain the filling into my pie shell. Let me grab that from the fridge. I like to bake this pie on a baking tray, just in case there are any drips. And because it's so fluid, it's just easier to move around. So let me move my whisk out of the way. Imagine this silky, rich maple custard. So good. All right. And even though there is a froth on the surface, that is okay. You don't have to clear it away. We're not making creme brulee. This takes 40 minutes to bake. And what I do is I preheat my oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. That's really to get the crust cooking as quickly as possible. But as soon as I put the pie in the oven, I turn the oven down to 375. And then that's when it takes 40 minutes to bake. And you'll see it'll actually be bubbling the entire surface of the pie. And when it stops jiggling or looking fluid, and of course your crust is a beautiful golden brown, you know it's done. All right, here is the pie after it's had a chance to cool. So it takes a minimum of 2 hours to cool the pie before you can slice it. Or if you want to make this a full day ahead, you can make it, cool it, and then chill it and serve it ice cold. Either way, it is just so good and so simple in its appreciation of a delicious flavor. So let me grab a plate and cut a slice. And there is no garnish, no icing sugar, no sprinkle of berries on top. You just appreciate this as it is. It slices almost like a pumpkin pie. And when you think about it, a pumpkin pie is a custard as well. Look at that gorgeous filling. Mm, yum. Think about it as maple caramel, as if you've made caramel. It is. It's as if you've made caramel out of maple syrup and then turned it into a custard. This is really something special. I love that look. If you've made a hearty stew or a soup and a big side salad, some crusty bread, this is the perfect dessert to serve at the end of a meal like that. Ooh, that is such a delicious pie. And you know what? For that quantity of maple syrup, it's sweet, but it's not overly sweet. I really hope you'll give this recipe a try, and I'll see you again for another delicious bake-along recipe. Bye, everyone.